Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to talk about adding a random game mechanic to the board game Scythe. This is the legendary box. The base box looks slightly different, but we have the legendary box to fit all the good components that come with Scythe, because we have everything but the metal mix, and it is a very good game. That was too rambly. We're going to start over. Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sam, and today we are going to do a brainstorm of adding a random game mechanic to the board game Scythe, designed by J.D. Stegmaier and published by Stonemaier Games. So in this segment, we will consult our wheel of mechanics by switching over to that screen. And so if you look in the top right of the screen, we have a wheel spinner that is populated with 63 different game mechanics. And once I click the spin button, we will be prompted with a random game mechanic that we have to do a design brainstorm of how we would go about adding that mechanic into the game of the day, Scythe. So without further ado, I will spin the button, click the spin button, and hope for something that is not already in Scythe. Action points. All right, so action points, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, in my understanding of it, is that each turn you are given a set number of points for you to spend by taking actions. I'm just gonna leave that on the ground. And so if we come back over into this screen, we'll shift that back a little. Hopefully that didn't cause motion sickness. But we are going to go into the pen tool, and we're going to take can't spell, action points, and our goal is to add that to Scythe. And so now we will pull up our phone and set a 5-minute timer for us to do this brainstorm in. So we got our timer app open, and we've clicked the button, and now we must brainstorm how to add action points to Scythe. And so this would probably remove the move your pawn and choose action, or we could keep it the same. And so what we would do here, and I want to preface that this brainstorm is probably going to make Scythe a less enjoyable game, but for the sake of the brainstorm session, we got to move forward with it. And so my initial thought is that you have your pawn still here, and that has to, so on one end of it, so it'd be, instead of a pawn, more like a cylinder, and on one end it would be -0, and on the other end it would be -1 resource. And so on your turn, not only are you moving it, but you're also flipping it to the other end to take the action. And so because everyone has 5 action points, let's say, you have your little pawn, and that tracks the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just check my phone real quick. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you'd be able to move this little cube here to track the actions you spent this turn, but the top actions will all cost 1 to perform, and the bottom actions would all cost 2 action points to perform. And so on your turn, you would be doing the same mechanic as move the pawn and take actions, but moving the pawn on certain turns will make either action cost 0 action points to perform, and you can't perform an action more than once. And the bottom when it's flipped to your action pawn over here, when you use it to move and it flips to the -1 resource, that would make the bottom action cost 1 less resource to perform. And so that is my quick take on how we would add an action point system to Scythe. So I'm going to pause the timer there. We were able to kind of come up with that one fairly quickly. So to recap, our challenge was to add an action point system into the board game Scythe. And how we did that was we are replacing this little pawn token with a cylinder that has -1 resource on one end and 0 action cost on the other. And we came up with the idea that not only are you moving it each turn, but you're flipping it to a new section to give you a benefit of sorts of making the actions either cheaper to perform because they wouldn't cost anything to take the action, or the bottom action costs less resources to perform when it's on the -1 resource side of the token. And so how I go about testing this is I would probably not even modify this. I would just write a little reference sheet that you would move it, and when it's face up, like standing, you would get that action space, those would be free to perform. And when it's lying on its side, that is 1 less resource. And so I would just have to create a card that would sit under the player board on its side. And I would make the 4 action, I'll switch back to the full camera. I would make the 5 action markers here, and then I would make like a 1 action point cost and a 2 action point cost on this card here. So I would provide those to sit under the board for the people helping test this mechanic concept to see if it's even enjoyable. And so that would be where all I'd have to create, and I'd probably create a little rules addendum for how the character pawn works. But once I made all of those cards, I would find a group of people that know the game Scythe and say, hey, I have this house rule concept that I wanted to test just to see how an action point system would work with a game like Scythe. Would you be willing to teach it or play it? And if there was at least one person that was willing to play, I would kind of give them the rules explanation of what this card would be, or not this, but the action point card. And then we play a normal game of Scythe like that and see how that action point system seems to play, if it was fun or not, and we would go from there. I'd love to hear in the comments below if you had a better idea of how you could add action points into Scythe. And if you like this kind of brainstorming content, please subscribe. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and look forward to engaging with you in the comments below.